What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be covering the genetic archives and the trash up to the first boss, X89. This is going to be going over 2 mini-bosses as well, but this video is made to get you used to the trash, the 2 mini-bosses in X89, so you can run through it without any issues. It's starting in fast forward because the genetic abominations that you run into in the beginning, they aren't hard to fight. They're easy to stun when they split apart, but this is just a straight tank and spank type situation, so once you get these guys down, you're going to start the first part of the actual mobs, and there's an ongoing joke that the trash in this game is harder than the actual bosses, but here you're going to see the Phageborn. They have a death dealer in their pack. You're going to need a second tank to separate them away from the rest of the 2 deer that are going to be there, and you're going to want to DPS those 2 other deer down while the death dealer is away from you, otherwise you will wipe. This guy will eventually run back. That's nothing to worry about. He'll actually come back to the tank on his own, but you got to make sure that it doesn't get taunted away, so your second tank can't taunt by accident. But either way, not a real hard encounter. All you have to do is make sure that you separate the 2 from each other. Good to know if you do have the Plague Phageborn, he's going to be casting a heal, and that is also interruptible, but once again, nothing really to worry about. These guys are down, you're going to be running into the Plague Breeder. This is probably the hardest mob to fight for a new group coming into Genetic Archives due to a few mechanics that he has. If you interrupt him, and he doesn't need to be interrupted, he will do a lot of damage to you, and it's pretty much going to be a wipe. So what you need to do is have an interrupt order set up amongst your group, and we like to have at least one person on like a standby emergency interrupt just in case. But if somebody does interrupt out of order, this guy will do a huge AoE and will do some serious damage. It's called Empowering Corruption, and like I said, if you don't interrupt this in the right order, then you're not going to be able to beat this guy in any kind of fashion at all. But he does go down very quickly if you do it correctly, as you can see here. But other than that, it's just a regular heal and stun kind of fight. But once again, if you stun out of order, he will absolutely melt your party. There's no way to get around it, and it gets progressively harder as you mess up more. So make sure your stun order is set correctly, and you'll knock that out. At some point, you will encounter these guys right here. These bridges are covered with these nasty little yellow things, and I'm a very good example as to how easy or hard it can be, but they confuse you when you hit them and do a lot of damage to you. But we actually picked the hard way first. There's another way to go if you head towards the first mini-boss. We'll show you in a second, and it's a little easier as far as the bridge goes. These guys right here are called the Corrupted Experimental Abominations, and what you're going to need to do with these guys is split them up. Again, you're going to have 2 tanks. One of them is going to enrage and get very large. If anybody does damage to him, he does a lot of damage back to you, so all you do is kite him away from the group as best you can, and when he gets small again, you kite him back to the group, and then you switch DPS back to the one that is no longer large. That is pretty much the extent of the entire fight. Not a whole lot going on there, but either way, it can be very surprising when one gets large if you're tanking them together, and he absolutely terrifies your whole group by destroying them right away, and you wonder what's going on. It's because that guy is enraged and you can't do DPS to him, so that's the only mechanic with these guys, and as you can see right here, it's just after you get that mechanic down, pretty straightforward fight. Once again, don't stand in the red. Turns out that stuff kills you. On the menu is called the Genetic Symbiotes. These guys are going to have to also have 2 separate tanks, so pretty much you're going to want to have 2 tanks for this whole thing ready to go anyways. But you're going to need to separate your group into 2 separate groups and then do DPS to both of them at the same time as best you can. They need to be within a certain percentage of each other, and what we end up doing is usually just taking range, putting them on one, putting melee on the other for ease of separation, but communication amongst your 2 tanks is important during this whole fight. Our tanks are saying 40%, 32%, 30%, and so on, just so everybody's on the same page, and you switch up DPS as necessary, pulling one away, putting them on the other one. These guys are the abhorrent stalkers. I'm terrible with that word. But either way, these guys are a joke. What they do is they drop down a big egg. It puts red underneath somebody, and it drops like almost like a mortar strike, for lack of a better term. All you have to do is bring that red over to the egg and make sure that the egg gets hit by the red thing. We haven't had a problem with these, and didn't see anything that was too hard about these guys at all. So once you get through that, these guys will just die really, really quickly. That brings us to our first mini-boss, the Hideously Malformed Mutant. This guy is basically free loot for a team that has any kind of coordination at all. You guys are going to want to separate just a little bit. As you can see, we're pretty spaced out here for the most part. He's going to put a red circle under somebody, and since this is from a healer's point of view, really the only job is to keep the person with the red circle underneath them healed. He also puts a squid out every once in a while. It attaches to a character. Again, it's just going to be the person with the red underneath them is going to need heals because he's going to be taking a little more extra damage. He does have something that you want to interrupt to put him in the moment of opportunity stage, get him where he's taking more damage. It looks like he's going to throw a baseball, so he'll pull his arm back, and when he does that, that's the sign to stun. The move is called Genetic Consumption if you're interested in what it is. And once again, this is a very easy fight and a good way to get your raid set up with a little extra loot early on. So once you get that interrupt down, you can see you don't even have to move him, you don't have to do anything special. All it is keeping your tank up in those moment of opportunities so he goes down a little faster and making sure the people with red underneath them get the heals they need. After this guy goes down, you'll notice that if you're in the raid that there are some trash mobs that aren't shown in this video. This isn't a how to get to the place you're going, but you're going to run into the same mobs, so there's nothing that should surprise you. After you watch this video, you should be pretty sure about what's going to be ahead. You're going to run into a couple repeats of the same trash that you've been going through, but other than that, there shouldn't be any surprises at all if you're taking the simple path to get to these guys. This is the Genetic Monstrosity. He is the second mini-boss you'll be encountering on your way to X89 if you choose to take this path. And he's pretty straightforward. What you're going to want is your tank kiting him around the outside. And when you get underneath the overhang, there is a panel located in the center that will light up when the prompt comes up on the screen. And you're going to need somebody on standby there at some point or able to get to there quickly. So when he gets underneath this overhang, you can get the, whatever it is, the goop. This is the overhang we're approaching right now. When you hit that panel, it drops something down. You're not allowed to be in the red circle. Imagine that. Seems to be the only steady mechanic the game has. And it's going to stun him, as you can see right here. He can be a little out of it, but you're going to want to tank him around the outside. Make sure that somebody hits that panel so that you can get this guy into a moment of opportunity, because he is going to be dropping eggs all around the map. You'll see the red circles underneath here. If they take any kind of damage or anything like that, they're going to pop, and it's going to be a lot harder. So those do a lot of damage and can cause you to wipe immediately, and they become more and more frequent as the fight goes on. So you're going to want to try and get him underneath those pillars as often as you can when you're kiting him around the circle, and make sure that you get as much damage on him as you can. Not a real hard fight, but it does take a couple tries most times for people to understand how to kite him, where to kite him, and to not hit the eggs, as well as get the stuff that goes on top of him. That brings us to first boss of Genetic Archives. This guy is pretty much a DPS rate. It's a DPS race, and he is got a few mechanics that tend to mess people up. As you can see, his first mechanic right here is a knockback, and he also does what we call the lighthouse, this move right here. It goes about half of 360 degrees, so whatever that math is, I'm here to talk about Wildstar, not do math. But he does that, this right here, which at the end of it, your tank has to direct that so that it hits a tile, because every time he does the long thing there, I don't know what else to call it, he will take away a tile from wherever it's pointing. So your tank has to point him in the direction to take out the tile strategically, because the more they go away, obviously the harder the fight is, and it is a timed thing, because if you fall, you do die. Now, we use Aura Mastery in this fight, and you can go pretty much anywhere to find the prompts that will pop up on the screen that you'll see here shortly to let you know whether you have the small bomb or the big bomb. Now, the small bomb, you can jump off at the right time when there's no time left on it, and then do some sort of movement move to get back on to the platforms, but most people just run it in the opposite direction that the tank is going and just put it on the edge, because it will take out a tile from underneath you, and this is on, I believe, a 5-second timer. So if you do this in the middle of your group, it's going to take a tile out of the middle of your group, and your group will die. Here you can see what the Aura Mastery does real quick there. It just says small bomb. It's not a real complicated mechanic at all. But there is the big bomb. This goes off, and if this goes off while you guys are standing on the tiles, or if the big bomb holder is standing on the tiles, it's pretty much an automatic wipe. You have to jump off of the platforms. You won't take any damage as you fall, well, most times, and it'll pop you back up on its own, and then you just land and you're good to go, as seen right here. So with those mechanics, all there is the lighthouse that spins around. There's the knockback that you can, you know, just if you hold towards the guy, you're not going to go anywhere, but you want to position yourself so you don't get knocked off of the edge. And really all it is just a really long fight. We found that if you lose somebody early in this, you're going to be losing around 1,000,000 DPS regardless of how good or how geared they are. So you can see where that would add up, and you're going to want those people alive the whole time. It gets smaller and smaller, but not real difficult, although I show out here at the end and do manage to kill myself. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. And after this, you will have downed your first boss in Genetic Archives. As always, thanks for watching.